Hello, and welcome to another episode of
the Super Data Brothers Super Show.
That's right. I am Ryan.
And I am Eric.
And we are two real-life brothers who work in the data and analytics industry. And if we got a good one for you today, folks.
Boy, do we. And, I'm so excited for today's show, Ryan, because people have been hearing about DuckDB. People have been hearing about MotherDuck and how it's going to speed up everything. Well, we've got just the person to help talk about that. We have Ryan Boyd, co-founder of MotherDuck, joining us today.
Absolutely. And he's a super cool dude, by the way. One of the coolest dudes I know in data. So we're going to bring Ryan on in just a second. But first, we have to thank today's sponsor, Good Data. That's right. Good Data sponsoring season 4 of the Super Data Brothers. And today, we want to cordially invite you to attend an upcoming Good Data webinar at 9 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, 6 o'clock Central European Time, all about agentic AI in the financial industry. So this is an area where Good Data has a particular strength, and that is helping you come up with kind of AI-driven data applications or agentic data applications for finance. A really strong focus in that. And we're going to be talking all about it on November 12th. So I will actually be hosting this webinar. It's another reason for you to attend, to make me look good in front of my boss when we get a lot of people in the asking questions and that sort of stuff. So check it out. We're going to be talking about use cases, doing a real demo, all sorts of cool stuff. So join us again, November 12th, 9 Pacific, 12 Eastern, 6 Central European Time for agentic AI in the financial industry. I hope to see you there. All right. So as you know, we shout people out when they let us know where they're watching from. So we got Johnny Winter saying, "What the duck?" Johnny's in the UK. This is one of those dudes. Every year, I see him once a year at Big Data London, and it's always good to see him. So thanks for tuning in today, Johnny. We got Aaron Wilkerson. I'm only here to see Eric. Ryan didn't attend our event last night, and I'm still not over it.
Well, I didn't attend. But I play D&D on Wednesday nights, so there's an order of priority here.
Yeah. And then, of course, we've got what do you know? It's Ryan Boyd saying "Duck yeah, Johnny." So why don't we use that as an opportunity to bring Ryan onto the show? Ryan, good to have you.
Hey, it's great to be here.
So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Oh, about myself. Wow, that's a big question. I have been working in the data industry for many years. We're currently leading developer relations and marketing at MotherDuck as a co-founder. One of my co-founders, Jordan Tagani, is who pulled me in. And Jordan and I met when we first worked on BigQuery back in 2012. So been in data, BigQuery, then Neo4j, then Databricks, and now here. So all sorts of different spots in both OLTP as well as the analytical side of databases. Previous to that was a developer building applications with Oracle and things like that. So been in the data industry a long time and super excited to just make things easier in data. But my life isn't all data. I also have a 9-year-old daughter and a wonderful wife, and I love sailing and plenty of other things too. So
awesome. So we're going to go deep today with Ryan on DuckDB, MotherDuck, how they help for analytics and AI workloads, how they're different from a Snowflake or a BigQuery. But first, we have to do our hero of data. So this week's hero of data is Florence Nightingale. Many people know the basic story of Florence Nightingale, and they know, oh, she was like a nurse or something, right? But actually, it goes way deeper than that, and there's a big connection to what we do in data. So imagine it's 1854, Britain's at war in Crimea, and thousands of soldiers are dying, but they're not dying from bullets. They're dying from filth. So into this chaos walks Florence Nightingale. She's a wealthy English woman who defies social class to become a nurse, very unusual for the time. She arrives at a British Army hospital in Constantinople expecting to treat people with battle wounds, but instead she's treating people with preventable, communicable diseases. And she finds sewage running throughout the halls. There's rotting food. There's just disease everywhere. Initially, she really believed that sanitation was the cause of most of the casualties they were having in the war rather than the actual war. People dismissed her at first. The generals ignored her. But she had one weapon that the military men didn't have, and that was data. So she began tracking everything: admissions, causes of death, time of year, the conditions of the facilities. And the numbers began to reveal that far more soldiers were dying from preventable disease than combat. And then, of course, she goes to advocate for this, and no one wants to hear it. So Florence created what is called the coxcomb diagram. You may have seen these. You might not have known this is what they're called. But if you look in your BI tool and you see one of these kind of exploded pie slice diagrams, this was actually created by Florence Nightingale to prove that the majority of the casualties in the Crimean War were not from battle-related injuries. Of course, she presents it to Parliament. Policy change follows. They have cleaner hospitals, better sanitations. Mortality rates fall from 42% to 2% for these soldiers. And she becomes a national hero. So everybody knows her. Oh, she's that famous nurse. But actually, what was her secret weapon for making these improvements in medicine that continue through to this day? It was data. And that is why Florence Nightingale is a hero of data. All right. I actually didn't know that till I was doing this research. I just figured, I knew the story of, oh, she was a nurse and she improved some conditions, but I didn't realize that she actually created that visualization type and used it to persuade people that actually it was not battle wounds that were leading to all these casualties. All right. So Ryan, let's get started. MotherDuck and DuckDB. Let's just start with what is DuckDB? Let's say someone's never heard of it before, how would you describe it?
So it really just depends on what else you've heard of. The easiest description for it is the SQLite for analytics. For those of you who aren't aware, SQLite probably has a dozen different copies, if not more, running on your phone, dozens or hundreds of copies running on your computer. It is an embedded transactional database. And then, the folks at DuckDB, so Hannes and Mark are the co-creators of DuckDB based in the Netherlands. And they basically saw all their academics around them using using kind of traditional tools for analyzing data. So they would be using data frames, they would use R, they would use, maybe some of the statistics tools like the SASs and SPSSs of the world. And, they were just kind of pissed off that they weren't using real databases. These are database guys, PhDs in databases. And so they're like, we need to bring a real database for these folks. And so they interviewed them and said, hey, why aren't you using a real database? And, it wasn't because they didn't know SQL. It wasn't because, that they didn't believe in real databases. It really just came down to the idea of nothing was lightweight enough for them. They didn't want to have to launch and run an extra service to run Postgres or MySQL at the time. They didn't want to have to connect out to, another service. So, they weren't using real databases. So Hannes Mark created DuckDB. It's an embedded analytics engine. So what that means is it's super fast at aggregations. It's a columnar database. It takes advantage of all the latest improvements and research into how to make super fast columnar databases. Some people think it's only in memory. That's not true. It is in memory, but it also has its own file format. So when you launch DuckDB, you can choose to specify the name of a file, and it will store your entire database in that one file. Also sort of a design decision from those early days, because they wanted to make it easy for the academics to share data with each other, not have to share like a whole folder of files, but could share a single file. So the single file represents all the tables in a database. And yeah, I mean, that's basically DuckDB. It's its roots, and then it's gotten to be extremely popular as this really lightweight tool. You can interact with it in every programming language. Most popular, in the Python world nowadays, and it does actually have a interface with data frames, so you don't really need to know SQL, but it's definitely much more powerful if you do know SQL.
Awesome. Now, of course, this is a live show, so if you make comments, questions, we will read them and ask them to Ryan live. So get those questions in, right? Let's not treat this like a webinar, okay? This is way cooler than that. Johnny,
you're way cooler than that, Ryan. That's because your name's Ryan.
Way cooler than a webinar.
Sorry.
Way cooler. So Johnny says, great origin story. Not working with databases makes me angry too. And so I think there's a lot of people feel that one. So that's DuckDB. So then how does MotherDuck fit into the DuckDB cinematic universe?
Yeah, I mean, I will give the short of it today, and then I will also give, since we have time, a little bit of the origin story as well. The short of it today is it is a cloud data warehouse. It is a cloud data warehouse that is used for two purposes. One is kind of internal BI and analytics, and one is customer-facing analytics, sometimes called data apps. And so we get customers on both of those use cases. Many of our customers have not worked with DuckDB before. They just come to us for the efficiency, ease of use, low cost of our cloud data warehouse product. And some come to us because they find, I mean, DuckDB has focused so much on ease of use, and so much on just kind of the developer ergonomics, that we do have some people come to us because of that. But the origins really came from Jordan, myself, some of the other founders who have worked a lot in these big data spaces, right? So Jordan and I met working on Google BigQuery. He was one of the original engineers there. He went on to work at SingleStore. I went on to work at Databricks, and we have other folks on the team who went on to work at Snowflake and things like that. And we realized that a lot of these systems are just over-architected for this universe that we predicted would happen back then. So we predicted when we were working on Google BigQuery that data will grow exponentially, and eventually you will need these 1,100 machines executing any given query in order to finish executing that query. And we were just wrong. We kind of marketed through fear. We said, this is, if you don't attach to this massive distributed universe early, you're not going to succeed in your career. So you might as well do it. And it turns out that compute grew a lot faster than data. The power of compute, whether that's Moore's law or one of the other dozens of laws around compute and memory and storage, everything grew a lot faster than the amount of at least useful data that people are processing. So it turns out nowadays you can do many things on a single machine. And that's really where MotherDuck started, is we said, how do we bring this efficiency from single machine compute into the cloud, right? How do we take this technology that DuckDB made and make it available for everyone in the cloud, enable collaboration and sharing and all of those things that you would expect of a cloud service? And so, we reached out to Hannes and Mark and basically said, hey, we're happy to give you a share of the company if you'll work with us as we build this. Hannes and Mark have their own company, DuckDB Labs, and a whole gigantic team of folks working on DuckDB open source project. And then we contract them, with them to add some features that make it work a lot better in a, cloud computing environment and such. But it really started off with that, and then as we tuned over the first couple years, we've been around since 2022. So as we tuned over the first couple of years, we really nailed down those two use cases around data warehousing for internal BI and analytics, and for the customer-facing applications. So today, we don't just scale vertically. We have tons of horizontal scaling in there as well, and doing other things needed for other the 5-10% use cases and all. In addition to the 80% use case, which is single machine compute that's super efficient.
Yeah, it really has been my experience that you don't need the kind of the MPP, scale out databases for most of what you're doing. It's really critical for certain tasks and queries and use cases, but for the most part, for your bread and butter analytics, like a single machine is powerful enough to handle it.
Yeah, and you just don't have all the overhead of
right.
the amount of overhead of shuffling in the old Hadoop world, or that concept as it's taken into Spark and other engines. Like, there's just so much overhead for the vast majority of data. And even at Databricks, I think the number one request I heard was for a single machine Spark instance, and it's like, why do you have the overhead of Spark if you're going to do that?
Exactly. We do have a comment here. Sanjeev says DuckDB is one of the key foundational technologies we use for, I'm guessing this is pronounced Xaqua or Zaqua, I don't know, the conversational data management platform. Happy to do the product placement for there if we're there for you, Sanjeev. So I'll let you know where to send. I'll let you know where to send the check. We adopted it a few years back. Simple and very powerful. Love it. I hear this a lot, actually. DuckDB itself is a core component of many of the newer generation of analytics tools, whether they're BI tools or some, kind of more use case specific data tools. I know at Good Data, we use DuckDB as part of our data platform. So it's obvious that the technology itself has been proven in the real world. And I guess, is it fair to say then MotherDuck is kind of like DuckDB on the cloud and on easy mode? Is that really what you're offering?
Yeah, and as sort of making it into a multi-user system and things like that. Some folks will say, well, it's super easy to put DuckDB in the cloud. Like, look, Postgres, you just turn it on and launch a bunch of VMs, and we have Postgres in the cloud. DuckDB and Postgres are not equivalent in that way, in that DuckDB was really designed as this SQL processing engine that's super efficient. And it does have storage, but it actually doesn't have networking, right? So, we put it in the cloud. We make it, into this multi-user environment. We make it work really well for SaaS applications who need to embed analytics in their applications, and make it work really well for the 24/7 services like BI tools and things like that.
So then, let's imagine that you're. So there's kind of two use cases, right? There's this traditional data warehousing, and then there's the analytics engine for SaaS apps. Is that accurate?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So for that traditional data warehousing, let's imagine someone watching today is using Snowflake, and they want to know, okay, how is MotherDuck different for that use case? I have to maintain a data warehouse, and then I do BI and analytics on top of it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with what really hooks a lot of people. As a geek, this isn't my key hook, but what hooks a lot of people is I interviewed a customer the other week for a case study, and they literally saved 65% off of their Snowflake bill when they went to MotherDuck, and exact same workload. So that certainly helps for a lot of folks. The key things are around simplicity, around as some of these platforms grow, the Snowflakes and the Databricks and the BigQueries of the world, there's just so many knobs and dials, and a lot of people don't need them, and it just makes their configuration and management a lot more difficult. So we aim for simplicity. The simplicity comes down to the querying side as well. If you look up on Google for friendlier SQL in DuckDB, DuckDB has done a ton of things to make SQL easier to use. They say, okay, we're going to start at like the standards, and really they started with a Postgres-based parser for SQL. We're going to start at the standards, but then we're going to say, like, what are the things that we think, would just make life easier? So they were the first ones to do group by all, for instance. And then a lot of the other engines, including, I think, Snowflake and BigQuery, added group by all. But why do you have to type in the names of all of these columns when you know what they are? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. Yeah. And they've done a huge number of other things to improve SQL to make it a lot easier to query. So, that aspect, you get that with MotherDuck. The other thing that you get is our web interface. A lot of people love it for the instant SQL is one of the features we launched earlier this year, maybe March, May. And instant SQL basically takes advantage of the idea that DuckDB can actually run in the browser through WebAssembly. You don't need to know those details, but like it's running in the browser, which enables you to do things like read ahead and cache from the database so that when you type a query, it instantly populates the query results. When you add a column, you instantly see that column. You have literally milliseconds between you adding a column name or an operation in SQL and seeing what that does to your data results. And that just changes the way we work. It gives us, what the creator Hamilton calls the flow state. Hamilton is a Grammy Award-winning music artist, and he now leads our UI team. And he wanted to take what this music synthesizer world of hardware and bring that to data, and that's where Instant SQL came about. So there's a lot of these sort of niceties that we're adding on top of it to make it easier to do your analytics. Another core one that I would talk about would be sort of the model of compute of basically what we call hypertenancy. So the idea that every user within an organization actually gets their own compute, and the admins can adjust how large that compute is, but they get their own compute so that they're not stepping on the toes of the other users within the organization, and you don't have to worry about that shared resource problem that you do with the other data warehouses. So I'd say it's between ease of use, lower cost, also just kind of investing in the future. The DuckDB folks will see an academic paper, and within weeks they'll have the PR into DuckDB to implement a new compression algorithm or a new way to speed up execution. And they and we are working with a lot of the leading database professors out there, to apply these things to and do additional research.
I have a comment here from Oladameji. He says simple is great, and this is like a meta comment because it's a great simple comment.
Yeah, it's perfect.
So thanks for joining us today again, Oladameji.
Yeah, and then let me pipe in here for. I know you like talking a lot, Ryan. Let me pipe in here for a second. No,
so
please. In the world of DuckDB and MotherDuck, have you seen a lot of it like crossover or adoption in like the world of like bigger enterprise and classic BI that maybe they have an Oracle database that is feeding SSAS cubes that's then being reported off of Power BI? Have you seen like these big slow organizations kind of adopt DB and MotherDuck? And like if you have, like, where does it slot in? I ask because I work for a big slow organization.
Yeah.
That has the exact setup I described.
So right now as MotherDuck, we're focused on SMB and mid-market for the most place.
Okay.
There are some features that larger organizations want to have that we don't yet have, but also it's a really good market that's growing really fast. So from the business side, the TAM is there in the SMB and mid-market space, and we can provide a great level of customer support that people aren't getting when working with the bigger players. People in the SMB and mid-market space are not getting when working with the big players. So, we have been focused there. There has been a lot of interest in the larger enterprise space in sort of the R&D groups and the leading edge folks of, the big banks and the big logistics companies and other things that we've talked to. We haven't yet really focused on those. I would say that some of them that have huge engineering teams have definitely adopted DuckDB. So you'll see great talks about how Okta uses DuckDB, for instance, where they break down their big data problems into little chunks, and they run thousands, if not tens of thousands, of simultaneous DuckDB Lambda jobs in AWS that kind of process each chunk of data as it's received all around the world at their different endpoints. This is kind of like for security log auditing, things like that. And they then use Snowflake as sort of their gold tier, but they got rid of Snowflake in the processing all of the data. They're just having DuckDB do that at a much lower cost. So the bigger organizations are able to adopt it. If they're sort of the R&D focused bigger organizations, they're adopting DuckDB and kind of rolling it on their own. And then we actually have plenty of customers who started rolling it on their own and then came to MotherDuck because they just didn't want someone, they didn't want to manage it day to day.
Yeah.
But, we're not yet into the, Fortune 10, Fortune 100, even Fortune 500 space, just because that's not really where we're focusing our energy.
Gotcha.
Our teams for, on the sales side, like to build strong technical relationships with practitioners, and we haven't yet done the take people out to golf yet. So maybe one day.
Oh yeah,
yeah. That's the next phase, right? Eventually, that the thing about that enterprise market is like they can write big checks, but with big mo money, mo problems. They say, and it's the requirements list will have a lot of stuff that. For mid-market, it's not as important. I think it lets you guys move faster, right?
Yeah, and I mean, we've done the like SOC 2 compliance, and we've done GDPR audits, and we've done other things like that. We just actually announced our European data center, so we're making it easier for our European customers to adopt us. But yeah, right now we're focused on the practitioners and not focused on the sell from the top that you often need to do in the large enterprises.
So here we have a comment. This is from Bora. Thank you for joining us, Bora, by the way, on LinkedIn. He says, thanks to MotherDuck, our non-data scientist customers who have big CSVs are able to analyze that data inside of ChatGPT/Claude via their AI DB MCP server. And by converting the CSVs into MotherDuck, and thank you. So I think this is actually a use case I'm really interested in, which is when it comes to DuckDB and MotherDuck is how to pair it with things like ChatGPT or Claude to do analysis, right? Like it just seems so like the time is so right for this kind of technology and its ability to quickly fit into these AI enhanced developer workflows compared to like a Snowflake or a Databricks. And this is a perfect example of that.
Yeah, it's so funny because do you guys know when ChatGPT was first announced? Like, I don't remember the date, but
I mean, I remember I kind of like 3.5 came out in which is when it hit my consciousness. And that was in October, was that October of 22 or 23? Something like that.
So I mean, basically
November 2022.
Thank you, Michael. When MotherDuck first started, which was June of 22, we certainly weren't conscious of this, and we did have discussions literally on the first day. We started in the Madrona offices in Seattle. For those of you who don't know, Madrona is a big VC firm focused on the Pacific Northwest, which is where our headquarters are. I'm in Boulder. Don't ask, but we started in those offices in Madrona, and on the first day we were talking about how does can we do text to SQL, natural language to SQL? Can we make it easier for the average business user? And at that time, like the whole founding team was pretty down on that idea. They had spent many years doing research on it in other companies, and never really, even putting the smartest people in the world, never really doing it well. Nowadays, like, it's getting a lot better with LLMs, with things like we do have an MCP server that you can attach to. And if you add a little bit of semantic modeling, semantic layers, whether manually or asking the LLMs to do it for you, you eventually get to a spot where it's decent. It's still not good enough to say, give me my numbers for my public company, quarterly earnings call. Like, oh my God, please don't do that. But it's getting good for a lot of day-to-day stuff. Where I particularly like it is just, we have this thing called Fix It, where basically you can type what you think is a SQL query and it will fix it. So I get syntax wrong all the time, or mix up the date time formats between, what is the Postgres versus the DuckDB versus the, MySQL date time formats. And it just fixes it. And so that stuff like is amazing. And the text to SQL is getting better. We actually have customers in that customer facing analytics world that run agents on top of MotherDuck, and they're just building all sorts of queries themselves as agents and running a lot, which is great for us on a consumption-based business model. But the agents are just kind of querying away and keep on trying to learn new facts from the data, in a much faster way than humans could. And MotherDuck turns out to be really well suited for that.
Yeah, I want to come back to that agent conversation and make sure we spend a good chunk of time on that before we wrap up today. But I do want to share this comment. Again, this is from Bora. He says, here's a Slack message from the customer he referenced earlier, who was able to analyze this data via MotherDuck, and he says it should make you feel good. So
let me read this one. That data analysis tool you showed, Ryan, game-changing for us. We just found a way to get data on our seeding, which is something we had highly paid data analysts trying to solve all year without success, bro. You have no idea.
Well, you should definitely reach out to me and share more about this story. I feel like you're doing my customer case study work for me. So thanks. Definitely reach out on LinkedIn.
And I feel like, unlike many other companies, you guys could really run with the "bro, you have no idea" quote.
Bro, you have no idea. Yeah.
Which is are ducks bros? I don't know. That's we are also named, MotherDuck, right? So is the MotherDuck the bro? I don't know. But, I love that, the simplicity of that statement. Let's put it that way.
Yes. Yeah. Bro, you have no idea.
Bro, you have no idea.
I mean, let's talk about that real quick. Just the branding. So going out, like deciding to go to market as MotherDuck was it's obviously provocative. So what did that decision look like? Like, how did you guys come to that? You know what? We're going to do it. Let's be MotherDuck.
So the name MotherDuck, actually came before I signed on to join the founding team. So this was, I think it came in like April, May. We started the company officially in June, where we had the kickoff. And the name came from Lloyd Tabb. For those of you in the data world that don't know Lloyd, he's the creator of Looker, which was bought by Google. He's now doing his own thing at Facebook. And it was created by Lloyd, and it was just, you have all the ducks. Who keeps all the ducks in order, right? And it's the MotherDuck that keeps all the ducks in order. So it didn't come out of profanity that a lot of people try to say that it comes out of. That's not true. It really came out of like, how do we organize all the ducks in the cloud? And so Lloyd came up with a name, and my first call with Jordan, basically I had taken a break after Databricks and went sailing for a bit, needed that break. And I reached out to Jordan and was just like, hey, what are you up to since you left Single Store? And he's like, oh, we should chat. And that's really how me joining the founding team came about. But in my first call, he mentioned the name MotherDuck, and I'm like, we're gonna have to talk about that name, but that's beside the point. And let's talk about the rest of the company. So I was not a believer in the first 5 minutes. A day later, I was a believer, and the reason I was a believer a day later is just talking to friends and family, like their ears would perk up as soon as I mentioned that name. It was shocking enough that it was memorable, and that's 99% of doing a startup in a B2B space is standing out. And if you go to a lot of these conferences, it's a bunch of black and blue booths with names that I could never remember. Mm-hmm. I even have products that I use once a day that, every other day I ping someone on the team, what is the name of this product again? Because I need to find it. And so MotherDuck is a name you remember. And so it wasn't that hard. I mean, I think basically we recognized that the stigma against provocative names exists in my generation, in earlier generations. But the people making the decisions, certainly in the SMB mid-market space and the enterprise space, by the time we get to it, these people are younger than us. They are millennials or Gen whatever else we're at now. And, they don't care that the name is provocative. It stands out for them. And basically we wanted to change the world of data to be fun and happy and go lucky and make, if you see a duck quacking, you can have an error in the product and still have a smile on your face. You might be pissed a little bit, but the smile on your face helps you balance that out, right? And honestly, that's bring joy to data. Stop these sort of incessant battles between different companies, putting each other down, and just bring a little joy. So I think it's worked out great.
Yeah, it's super memorable. Everything about it, the name, the images you guys use. I mean, certainly if you can give me a cute duck quacking on an error screen, I am much happier than with your typical error screen with a big red X. So
we do have to get better at that, at putting some of the ducks in, right? So the irony is some of the founders are still against the name to this day, and it is what it is. You're always going to have some disagreements, but I think it served us super, super well. And even those that are kind of against the name also recognize that it served us super, super well. So
yeah, I mean, I think when it first hit my consciousness was at Day-to-Day Texas.
Yeah.
Where you were on stage in a duck outfit, if I recall correctly. And I had no idea what DuckDB was. But the name and the presentation and everything stuck in my head. From that day forward, I was paying attention. Even though it was at that point, it was yeah, it's some new database, right? I didn't even, that's all the attention I had given to it. But I was I was paying attention.
I mean, I think just to refresh your memory, a data council is where people were on stage in
okay.
Outfit. Prior to that, there was New Orleans. What was the New Orleans event? So Tino went around in a blow up duck thing in New Orleans. I think it was Coalesce. It was Coalesce in New Orleans.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Jordan did an onstage presentation in a duck outfit. So the reason I'm actually even bothering correcting that is that Day-to-Day Texas, an event I really love dearly. It's an amazing event run by a gentleman named Lynn Bender. Lynn Bender is still a little, because we've talked about sponsoring 2 years ago. I think we talked about sponsoring, and I'm I'm only going to do it if I can bring the duck. And he was like, I don't know about that for our audience, for our whatever. And I'm well, let me know when you're okay with that, and I'll sponsor this next year. We're sponsoring. I think he's been convinced.
Awesome.
it does take some people a little bit, to get accustomed to it, but then it works out really well.
Yeah. And folks, for those of you interested in attending Day-to-Day Texas, you can get 20% off your registration by using code SuperDataBrothers.
Data Brothers.
So
thanks for the plug, Ryan.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll plug my own conference then too. We have Small Data San Francisco in 2 weeks. I don't have a code for you guys all custom. I can make the Super Data Brothers code after I'm done on this show.
Please.
But feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn if you want a discount for that. It's 2 days.
Yeah.
Efficiency and data.
Yeah. And while we're at it, Data in the D conference.
I think we have a talk there too.
You do. Yeah. That's coming up November 8th here in Detroit. So check it out, datainthed.org. You can find the conference info there. No discount code for that. It's only $100. So, it's highly affordable one-day conference here in the D.
So, and Alex Monahan is the guy that's giving the talk there for MotherDuck. And Alex is the only employee ever that has been an employee both of DuckDB Labs and MotherDuck. Now he's exclusively MotherDuck, but he's a super knowledgeable guy. He's actually the one that wrote a lot of the articles on the friendlier SQL with DuckDB. So show up there and ask him all the questions.
Yeah, we're really happy to have you guys out here, especially I think if you look at Detroit's economy, I think we have a lot of firms that are looking to start to modernize and kind of are still operating in a pretty old school enterprise way, but I think that's changing. And so we're happy to be able to bring you and other more innovative firms in to kind of show people in Detroit, like, hey, here's some of the stuff you could be doing,
Honestly, like I grew up in the tech world in sort of the Silicon Valley bubble. I was an engineer for 5 years in Rochester, New York, but then moved to San Francisco in 2006. And it is a bubble, and it is a environment where you just get accustomed to all these new technologies and all that, and they aren't as exciting. And then you leave that world and you go to Day-to-Day Texas, or presumably you go to Detroit, and everyone is super excited. There was a DuckDB meetup in Tennessee or something like that like filled the room, right? And so I think that getting outside of that bubble is always fantastic.
Yeah. So let's read a couple comments here. First of all, we've got Johnny Winter saying MotherDuck is a better name than Looker, and that he's having conference FOMO already. So yeah, all three of these conferences are great. Johnny, come join us here in the United States. And then I do want to address this question for Pooja. So Pooja says, for collaborative teams, how should we structure a MotherDuck environment? Do you have supports for roles? Something like shared workspaces, do you use naming conventions for data sets and queries? Like, just what is the standard for keeping things clean?
So the basic structure, so we'll talk about, MotherDuck for what I presume is an internal BI data warehousing space. There's different structures around the customer facing analytics, but the general structure. So we use MotherDuck ourselves for our internal data warehouse. And we actually use Omni as our BI tool on top of that. But everyone in the company has access to the internal data warehouse. And, for those of you thinking about size, I think it's like a 3 terabyte data warehouse at this point. Like, DuckDB does scale. I will say that very strongly here. A lot of people assume that it doesn't, but, and so the way that we have it structured is basically we have service accounts that go in and build the data. So we have, I think it's still Airflow jobs that go and process the data from all the different data sources, HubSpot and our own product and Datadog and other things, and do all the ETL and load the data in owned by that service account. And then what happens is that there's a read-only share for what we call as MDW, which is MotherDuck Data Warehouse. And there's a read-only share that everyone in the company has access to. It's delayed by a minute, 2 minutes, something like that. but it's basically a read replica that can scale, fairly infinitely for all the users within the organization to access. And then every user, when they log in, they get their own DuckDB instance. The share is available to them because we share it organization wide. So anyone that has an account within our organization. So we do have the notion of an organization and admins in that organization, and then a set of users. And then, you can share things with the whole organization. So people will just see it in their left nav when they log in as one of the databases available to them. And they can just start querying it. And, the beauty of this architecture is they're querying it on their own compute. So it's a separation of storage and compute. They're querying it on their own compute, accessing the data in this share, running their own reports and however they want to do it. And then, the BI tool also connects through that. Right now, we have a thing called read scaling. So the BI tools, can, end up using many machines to connect and query the data. And we're working with a lot of the BI tools to roll that capability out because they kind of need to pass an identifier of who the end user is in order for that to happen well. But the core concepts of organizations, users, shares are all there. There's roles in terms of admins or non-admins today. We're working on expanding roles. We're working on things like row level security, column level security, and all sorts of other things that as we go higher up mid-market that folks need.
Yeah. Integration with Active Directory?
That is SSO stuff is being worked on. Presumably that, Active Directory is in that scope. To be honest, we haven't heard it that much, or I haven't heard it that much. I think as we expand more in Europe, we just launched our European data center. So as we expand there, we'll see Microsoft products pop up more and more because they're more dominated in that world. Today, you can log in with your Google Apps account through OpenID or OAuth, an old friend of mine, and do that. But yeah, eventually we'll get to full like Active Directory and all of the other larger enterprise features.
We got a couple more great questions here. Before I ask them, folks, if you like this kind of content where we do live interviews, where you can get your questions into real leaders in the data space, I'm going to need you to click the like button on YouTube, subscribe, hit the bell. And if you're watching us on LinkedIn, why don't you go ahead and share this to your LinkedIn feed so we can spread the love of the Super Data Brothers throughout the community.
You also need them to share it to their LinkedIn feed, right? Not
correct.
Just want them to.
Yes, do it now. So a couple questions. So Michael Dunphy asks a question. Could you share why you chose Omni over other BI vendors? He's looking at alternatives to Tableau, very popular topic right now, and trying to learn more about Omni. And I would say, Michael, if you go back in the show archive, the very first interview I ever did on the Super Data Brothers was with Colin, the CEO of Omni. So go check that out if you're interested. But Ryan, tell us about Omni.
Well, first of all, if we're doing plugs here, Colin and the Omni team will be at Small Data SF in 2 weeks, and you can ask them directly. But why did we choose Omni? I think that there's a couple things. There's a team culture around this. A lot of the Omni team came from Looker. So after Looker was bought by Google, and kind of Google, we'll say, changed their philosophy on how to support Looker and the community. So our head of customer success ran the Department of Customer Love at Looker. And our head of biz dev came from Looker, and there's a few others. So, it's only, 10% of MotherDuck as a company are ex-Lookers, but, they're a very motivated 10%, let's put it that way. And so, we had those folks and, looking at what they did in Looker and what they were planning on doing in Omni to build upon that in their next company. There's a lot of just belief in the team and where the product is going and what the team is doing. And there's a lot of excitement around that. It's hard to say that for a lot of other BI tools. That's what we believe startups are all about. Like, I think that a lot of people will choose a product that is not yet, where they need it to be, but they have strong belief in the team and where it's going. And that's much better than choosing a product that, is quasi where you need it to be right now, but it's on a downhill path, which is what is happening a lot in industry due to acquisitions and things. So, I'd say that's a lot of it. We do believe in sort of their visualizations and just, the beauty that they attach to their visualizations, their semantic model way of referencing data within their visualizations. But we also do have a lot of other BI partners, and I don't want to expand on this too much further because I don't want to be critical of them. We want to be the happy, good folks in data. And I guess I'm talking to one of the BI partners right now here too. So
I wasn't going to say data. I was going to say data. All right, we have one question here, and then I do want to make sure we talk a little bit about kind of what you see coming from agents. But I want to ask this because this is something I'm wondering too. Sanjeev asks, in your experience, what are the typical real life use cases where people are doing in-browser analytics? And what concerns, if any, do you hear about that way of doing it? And this is something I'm really interested in. I mean, even purely from a BI perspective, I think if you could ship off a data model to the browser, just the speed of interactivity is better than sending queries to a server, right? So this is something I'm pretty curious about.
Yeah, I mean, I think DuckDB is all about how do you be super lightweight, and you're getting lightweight enough that it can run in the browser in WebAssembly. A lot of BI tools do it already, and you don't know about it necessarily, but you see them be super responsive in the browser, and DuckDB is what's enabling that. And the challenge with many of those BI tools is then, they have to build a second layer of SQL translation or whatever, because the SQL that's running inside the browser is DuckDB SQL. And if it's connecting to then a Snowflake instance or something like that, there's a translation that occurs that just makes it a little bit harder to implement and maintain from an engineering perspective. But a lot of the BI tools do it. What we are seeing is more and more of the customer-facing analytics want to have it. So you have a bunch of end users. Let's say, you're looking at we have a bunch of logistics companies. So you're looking at some of the package delivery services and things like that, and you want to see a map of where things got delivered, and you want to be able to zoom in and out of that map, or you want to be able to, as you expand your view, to query more data from the database, or you want to see charts over time, and you want to enable you just to kind of scroll right across that chart and see the data instantly. That's the type of stuff where it really makes a difference, especially kind of in that sort of consumer or modern B2B tools space. And some of those have not yet implemented it, but the reason they choose to be based off of DuckDB and MotherDuck is because that is available down the line. I'll be brutally honest here, is WASM itself as a technology is kind of a pain in the ass. And to get to the other part of this question, the reason it's a pain in the ass is that it does put tons of security restrictions on what your web application can do, and you start to need to do lists of every permission that you're granting the web application to do, instead of sort of the default allow all that you're used to as a web app developer. So it can be kind of painful to implement. But luckily, a lot of other folks have done that for you if you choose one of the BI tools, especially one of the BI tools that does sort of embedded analytics.
Awesome. So let's. We got about 5 minutes left, folks. You've been a great audience. Again, I would ask you, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff.
Go do it.
Yes. I do want to close by just asking you about what are you seeing in the early days of agents and the impact agents are having on data loads or data structures? Just like, what do you see today and where do you see this headed?
Yeah, I mean, today we're starting to see a lot more agents interacting with databases. I think there's been some quotes around like some of the bigger transactional databases out there in the world talking about how agents have taken over a lot of the workloads, but we're also seeing it in analytics. LLMs and kind of the modern AI tools are really sort of really bad at aggregations and really bad at facts in general. And so, I've seen this when, putting in a list of things and saying like, how many are in this list? And it's like, there's 3, even though there's 7 in the list. I mean, you just get all sorts of wrong data. But yet data is important for making a lot of decisions, right? And so the advantage then of hooking up a LLM or an agent to an analytics database is that, you have the analytics database doing the facts and looking up the results and doing the aggregations. So the AI doesn't have to. So it's really kind of a specialization of interests, idea there. And like I said earlier, a lot of times what they'll do is they can execute queries a lot faster than a human. So they'll execute, 10, 15, 20 queries and see, just to explore the data and understand the data better. And then, they can then take meaningful action from those different results. Where we're seeing it really awesome with DuckDB and MotherDuck is that hypertenancy architecture. Whereas you might not want to push a agent or point an agent at your Snowflake instance and let it run away like wild on your Snowflake instance from a cost perspective alone. When you restrict it to essentially a single machine sandboxed environment that you can choose what data you're sharing to, et cetera, that works a lot better in the agent world, and you don't need to really worry about that sort of runaway costs. And so we're seeing a number of companies doing that with MotherDuck today. And we, as individuals at the company also are, looking at agents to sort of power our workflows based off of MotherDuck data using things like the, MDW that I talked about earlier.
Awesome. All right. So that brings us to the top of the hour. Ryan, I want to thank you for joining us today. Awesome show. Where can people keep up with you?
LinkedIn is probably the best. I'm really bad at most other socials nowadays, but so keep up with me on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out to me at any point. I'm also just Ryan at MotherDuck, kind of bad at email, but I will try. And would love to hear from you. And we also do have our own MotherDuck community Slack. There's DuckDB Discord. There's, all sorts of other ways the community can interact with each other too.
Awesome. Well, folks, check out DuckDB. I am a believer in the technology and a big fan of MotherDuck. So really glad you could join us here today. Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan. And thanks, Eric. So great. I did not know until now that you're real life brothers. So thanks.
We are real life brothers.
Yep. We are real life brothers. That's right.
That's why we say it at the opening every time.
Yeah. Cause that's the number one question we get asked. Are you really brothers? Like, yeah, we're really brothers. All right. See you, Ryan.
Cheers. Bye.
All right, man. I just really, I realized when I was writing the show, not the show notes, but I was writing the promo post for this episode that it was going to look like sponsored content because I like DuckDB and MotherDuck so much.
You're too enthusiastic.
Yeah, really. But this was not sponsored content, folks. Or rather, not by MotherDuck. It was sponsored content by Good Data. So coming up, November 12th, 9 o'clock Pacific time, 12 o'clock Eastern, 6 p.m. Central European time. Over at Good Data, we are talking to you all about agentic AI in the financial industry, particularly how people are using good data to create customer-facing agents that do things like analyze data, suggest outliers, help customers rebalance portfolios, evaluate credit risk, and take actions based on the credit risk. All these sorts of things in customer-facing data applications. And so, particularly if you're in the finance industry, you got to come check it out. Even if you aren't, I think there's a lot you're going to learn about the cutting edge of what people are doing with agents and customer-facing data apps. So join us on November 12th for that. Okay. Last thing to plug. I feel like this was just like plugging stuff like crazy here this episode, but this is how it goes. It would be awesome if we were getting paid for all this, but
yes.
The last thing I wanted to plug, did you know we have a blog? superdatablog.substack.com. Head over there and subscribe to check it out. The latest thing we posted was about if you're a BI person and you're freaking out because your BI tool is dying, what can you do to insulate your career and take the next step, right? And it's not just wait for someone to get good data or Omni. There's things you can do today to help take the next step in your career. So check that out, superdatablog.substack.com. Okay. I think that's it, right? That's got to be it.
That's it.
All right.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Until next week,
Yep.
We are the Super Data Brothers. Take care, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.